Kongversation. Help! I'm being mauled by a leopard! Hopefully this doesn't make me drop in the polls!
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell. This week, I'm joined by perennial DK Vine staffer and all-around lovely gentleman, Cameron Reigle.
Oh, you don't have a Nick on this week? That's weak.
No. I'm tired of Nick trading you out. I'm like Donald Trump and his wives, am I right? Three weeks to go until we don't have to make Donald Trump jokes anymore. I hope to God that's the case. No, welcome to the show, Cameron. It's been a while since we've had you on. I think you were last on New Year's, the New Year's Eve episode.
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
I brought you on this week for a particular reason because out of the entire DK Vine staff, maybe, besides legacy staff like Jeff, I think you're the best equipped for the discussion this week. And that is Star Fox. You, out of all the DK Vine staffers, you definitely have the most, I think, intimate knowledge about the entire Star Fox series. So, because we're...
Yeah, I think maybe part of that is sort of during the buyout era when Donkey Kong games kind of weren't coming out regularly and things I needed to find new interests. Star Fox was one of those series I leaned really hard into during that time.
Yeah, same here. Well, what I really liked about Star Fox during that era was Rare got the ball rolling and then Rare split to Microsoft, but that ball kept rolling. And I guess it was the ball that Tricky always wanted to play with. But as far as like that world they built for Star Fox, and they didn't really remake the world of Star Fox the same way they remade the world of Donkey Kong, but I definitely think they took Star Fox down a more continuity-laden direction, and for whatever reason that carried onward after they left up until this last year. So, yes, for me, like Star Fox was, even though Rare no longer had any say under the property, it still very much felt like they had their tendrils manipulating that puppet. And, for me, like when I wasn't getting that much satisfaction out of Donkey Kong, I still very much was loving what was happening with Star Fox. Not too many other people were, and we're going to be getting into that this week. This is going to be Salvaging Star Fox. Basically, what can Nintendo do to right the good ship Great Fox? Because they've kind of wrecked it. And
well, I mean, that's what happens when you try to stare at the GamePad while you drive.
Yeah. When, I mean, for me, though, I don't know, like, I want to love Star Fox again, and I'm fully aware that things that I actually really dig about Star Fox aren't really appreciated by the most hardcore Nintendo loyalists. But we're going to be getting into that kind of split in the fandom this week. And for the record, let me just clarify, because I know we get new listeners all the time. Why is the Kongversation talking about Star Fox? So let me briefly get into all this. And if you already know all this, you can go, fold the laundry, you can, I don't know, do the dishes, do whatever you have to do, and come back in about 5 minutes, because that's probably how long this is going to take. Basically, we here at DK Vine do cover some Star Fox games. We cover what we now call the Dinosaur Planet trilogy, which were the games that followed Rare briefly touring the franchise. And what happened was Star Fox Adventure started off as a game called Dinosaur Planet, which started off as a Diddy Kong Racing sequel made by the same team that was, for some reason or another, going to keep exploring the life of Tricky the Triceratops. Well, through all the iterations of the game, Tricky remained. So when it became Dinosaur Planet, it became, I don't know, the origin story of Tricky the Triceratops, the boss character from Diddy Kong Racing. And then even when it became Star Fox Adventures, Tricky kept hanging around. And you can make the argument, well, it's not the same Tricky, but we here at DK Vine, and we finally broke Rare down on this too. They finally copped to the fact that, sure, it's the same Tricky, whatever. But because Star Fox Adventures has a young Tricky in it, we here at DK Vine cover it as a prequel to Diddy Kong Racing, which would, amusingly enough, place the entire Star Fox mythology several decades at least before the events of the Donkey Kong series. And, of course, Tricky reappeared in Star Fox Assault. Star Fox Adventures also introduced the character of Crystal, who was a character in Dinosaur Planet as well, although she started off as a cat, and when Star Fox Adventures came around, she became a fox, so she could do the nasty with the title character. And basically, Crystal, we consider her a Donkey Kong Universe character, so we continue covering the Star Fox series through Star Fox Command, the game that came out for the DS. That's the third and so far final game in what we refer to as the Dinosaur Planet subseries of Star Fox. Are you confused?
And if
Cameron?
you think this connection is a little tenuous, just humor us. We really like talking about Star Fox.
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, people make the argument, well, no, shouldn't Star Fox Adventures be what you consider a cameo game? Tricky the Triceratops is still making a cameo in it. It's not its own series. It's Star Fox. It says there right in the title. To that, I would argue Star Fox Adventures is essentially the same game as Dinosaur Planet. They made some compromises. They abbreviated the story, and they got rid of the dual playable characters, and they just all shoehorned it into Fox. You only play as Crystal in the prologue, essentially. But for all intents and purposes, it is the same game as Dinosaur Planet. And because Dinosaur Planet started life as its own series, we view Star Fox Adventures as Dinosaur Planet, essentially. That's why on the DK Vine forum and on DK Vine proper, we classify these games as Dinosaur Planet. We used to classify them as DKU Star Fox, which was just idiotic on our part. But when Star Fox Adventures was announced, we were very hopeful that it was going to be the first of many Star Fox Adventures games that Rare would make.
And it certainly looked that way at first, because when they first announced the brand change, the title of the game was, in full, Star Fox Adventures Dinosaur Planet.
That's right. Yeah, so we of course, being the hyperbolic fanboys that we are, imagined Star Fox Adventures, Walrus World, Star Fox Adventures, Octopi Planet. You basically just covering every Diddy Kong Racing boss down the list. But it did not come to pass. Microsoft purchased Rare, and then they shortened the game's title just to Star Fox Adventures, knowing it was going to be a one-and-done event. Namco, though, did carry the torch, surprisingly, with Star Fox Assault, and it followed up on numerous plot lines that Star Fox Adventures introduced.
They even brought back the original name for Dinosaur Planet, Soria, which came out of nowhere.
Yeah. They actually added to the lore of Rare's game, which, I mean, for all the issues I have with Namco for creating the worst Donkey Kong game ever made in Donkey Konga 2, I can't totally hate them because they created a game I actually really love in Star Fox Assault. And yes, my love for Star Fox Assault, I realize, might be controversial in some sectors of Nintendo fandom, but we're going to be getting into that as well. Real quick, let's get into some due diligence, Cameron. And I know you are not used to doing the due diligence, so buckle up, and I might have you take a crack at some of this. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, Patreon. Support DK Vine on Patreon. For $1 a month, we will give you free stickers, basically as a thank you. We give you 4 stickers, DK Vine branded stickers. They are lovely doodles rendered by one Matt Corna of they're homages to Donkey Kong Universe characters, and you're not paying us money for them, lawyers at home. No. You're giving us $1 to support the site, And as a thank you, we're giving you these lovely works of art that you can stick anywhere, although they do get destroyed in the rain. So keep them dry, folks. Keep them dry. And the cool thing about the stickers that I want to get into real quick is in February, we're going to be rolling out Wave 2 of these stickers. So anybody who's been a patron, all this time, who already got your stickers, you're going to be getting another set of stickers. 3 new characters and some new other thing. Because we have the DK Vine logo in Wave 1. I don't know what Wave 2's ancillary sticker is going to be, but we'll see. And I don't know for how we're going to make the older stickers available to people who want them after the fact, who sign up, in March.
Oh, no, Hyle. They're going to have to scalp for those on eBay.
I don't know. We might make them available in like giveaways or something, or like raffles or contests or something. There'll be a way for people to get them if they really want them. But my point is, $1 a month, you're going to be guaranteed these stickers so long as you keep backing us. There'll be Wave 3, Wave 4, Wave 5 every year until we're all dead and in the ground. And even then, we'll have some sort of automated system where we'll send drones to give you new stickers each and every year. And it'll be, I don't know, when DK Vine's run by AI completely, we'll still be cranking out these Patreon stickers. So that's just one of the many benefits of backing us on Patreon. There's also $2 a month, gets you into the Minecraft server, and gives you day early conversations, the early bird special. So you don't have to wait like a filthy peasant to get your conversation fix. It'll be beamed to your inbox 24 hours early. You can be in a secret club that knows exactly what we're going to say before we've even said it. But to really get in early, you want to get in on the live streams, which are $5 a month. Listen to us live. We've had a minor blip in the service over the last few weeks as I moved and got set up and started hosting the streams myself. We're getting those sorted out. We're actually doing this episode live once again, and I'm actually looking at the Twitch chat right now. And I see many DK Viners in there. Carla Gurney's in there. Mamechi's in there. They're bitching about Star Fox already. So good to see. So $5 a month gets you early or live streamed conversations. And that's, one of the many benefits of backing DK Vine on Patreon. And as I said, it also, the whole reason for DK Vine being on Patreon is it gives us the funds to improve DK Vine. And I am staring at my Elgato device right now, which I will be using to stream my weekly Donkey Konga 2 torture sessions, which will be coming later this year. The Slushed Fun Twitched. I would say I can't wait, but that would be a lie. I'm really dreading doing this, but because of my dedication, I will abuse myself for you, the people.
If you listen, you can hear it coming, and it sounds like cheap plastic.
And tears. Don't forget about the tears, Cameron. Why don't you get us off this topic and pimp the many avenues DK Vine is on as far as social media is concerned, because you actually are in charge of one of them.
Yes. Okay, let's get rolling with this. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, now updating maybe occasionally every once in a while. Once a month on average. And of course, check out our YouTube channel, subscribe. We've got some new video content rolling out every so often. Be sure to keep an eye on us.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking us, when's the final part of the Hall of Fame coming? Well, here's a Kongversation exclusive. November 8th seems like a good day as any, right?
Yeah, I can't imagine there's anything significant that would overlap with that date.
Yeah, it's funny. It would be like, we want to dominate the headlines on November 8th. So we thought, well, nothing else is going on that day. Well, that'll be a good day for the final Hall of Fame winner to be revealed, because we've been holding it close to our chest, and America and the world, they're dying to know who will win Decision 2016. Who will be number one in the DK Vine Hall of Fame class of 2016. So find out on our YouTube channel November 8th. Finally, as far as DK Vine's concerned, join the forum. I would say there's never been a better time to join, but knowing the DK Vine forum as I know it, they're going to all be in completely relevant discussion right now, bitching about politics. And as much as I love a good, healthy political bitch fest, no thanks. I'm gonna look. We've got the NX being revealed hopefully any week now. By the way, the Wall Street Journal and like all these business magazines were predicting it was going to be early October. Our early October has come and gone, and we still don't know jack shit about the NX. So as soon as the NX is revealed, the DK Vine forum will be a place to really congregate and discuss it. But then we also have Yooka-Laylee coming early 2017.
I mean, the thing's not even going to be called the NX, so really we have negative information about it.
Right. The mounds of ignorance that relate to this. I mean, we know it's going to be a console portable hybrid, right? I mean, that's not faulty information. Although at this point, I don't really trust anything as far as the NX is concerned. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was just a Game & Watch. It's just like Nintendo's giving it away. If you mail in serial box tops, I could see them just really fucking giving up at this point. So I'm trying to remain positive about the NX, and I'm going to be looking forward to discussing it on the DK Vine forum. But like I said, Yooka-Laylee's coming out early 2017. We've got Sea of Thieves on the horizon, and that's going to be a big community-driven game that I know will just energize the DK Vine forum. So don't let the dearth of news and the political bitch fest scare you away from the DK Vine forum. Get in now, make yourself known, make some friends, and then I can say with great confidence, there's never been a better time to join. Okay, Cameron, enough due diligence. Before we get into Star Fox discussion, I do want to discuss something from the last episode. And apologies, it's been more than a week since the last episode. I have been battling illness. I'm getting over walking pneumonia, and it's been like flaring up because I don't give myself any rest or the adequate amount of rest. And then I feel like death. So I haven't been coughing at all this episode, which I'm very thankful about. I've been chugging tea like a madman to soothe my vocal cords. But last episode, when I was still a healthy young man, we had a report from TwitchCom. One of our listeners, Evan Lynn, aka Musical Shy Guy on the DK Vine forum. You see, he's on the DK Vine forum. He knows there's never been a better time. He called in with a report about playing Yooka-Laylee, and go back and listen to that episode because we've learned a lot of stuff. But he claims he wasn't quite clear in some of the points he made, and he sent me a message over Facebook and then posted this on the DK Vine forum as well about some clarifications about what he addressed last week. So, first of all, he talked about a character called Duke, who was one of the corplets, one of the main bad guys or bad guy drones in the game. And it sounded like, from what he said, that Duke was the leader of the corplets, at least in Tribal Stack Tropics, which is the first world of the game. But according to Evan, no, Duke is just a normal NPC, and it's unknown if he has any actual affiliation with the other corplets. Besides being a corplet himself. He might be like in Mario, where you have some Koopa Troopas who don't seem to be affiliated with the Koopa Troop at all. They're just benign turtles who want to race you. So, wanted to get that clarification out there. And he also said, as far as Vendy the vending machine goes, the 5 pages that he collected itself was a challenge. After completing the challenge, the duo automatically gains a tonic, which are like the Cheeto pages from Banjo-Kazooie. And he also wanted to say that since he is the main editor on the Yooka-Laylee wiki, because of course there's already a Yooka-Laylee wiki, even though the game is not even out yet, he provided me a link to the Corplet page on Yooka-Laylee Wiki, and I'm clicking that right now. I have not read this in advance. He said we would like something on there. So let's see. Okay, here we go. Under trivia, it says, in early development of the game, Corplets were referred to as Keith Minions. In a DK Vine Twitch stream of the Toy Box. This was the involuntary twitching that Chad did of the Toy Box. Platonic Games joined the Twitch chat, and a user named the Purple Dragoon asked Platonic Games if the minions were still named Keith, and Platonic Games responded that they're called Corplets. So that's where we first learned they're called Corplets, in involuntary twitching. So there you go. Well, I did not know that. Thank you for the clarifications, even, and thanks for calling in last week too. It was much appreciated. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about Star Fox, Cameron.
All right.
So
hit me.
After Star Fox,
put him up.
What?
Put him up.
Oh, put him up. Oh, you actually want to fight about this? I think we're going to be mostly on the same page. I don't know. We'll see. So Star Fox Zero was when did Star Fox Zero even come out? I don't even remember this. It was earlier this year, right?
It like Q1 or between Q1 and Q2. I'm gonna have to Google it, aren't I? Oh my god!
It's funny that we don't even see what confuses.
I bought this thing at launch and I don't remember.
It confuses me because E3 2015 was the first E3 that Chad and I had attended live and in person. And Star Fox Zero was Nintendo's big game at E3 2015. So my brain wants to tell me it came out holiday 2015, but I know that's not right because Nintendo didn't have a big game holiday 2015. That's why
I see in our Twitch chat, Mamechi has just cleared it up for us. It was released in April of this year. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was earlier this year, but see, I knew it wasn't holiday 2015 because it was going to be their big game for holiday 2015, and then they delayed it, so Nintendo forced Camelot to rush out their Mario Tennis game, even though it was pretty lacking. So, yeah, there you go. So Star Fox Zero came out this spring, came and went, and I think it's safe to say, Cameron, it was a huge, colossal flop, the likes of which rarely happen with Nintendo games.
And note, when we say flop, we don't mean necessarily critical flop. We mean financial ruin.
Yeah.
I'll say.
I am not... Okay, let's just get this out in the open here. This is not us ganging up on Star Fox Zero. I have not myself played Star Fox Zero yet. Cameron, have you?
I have, and I may get into some detailed thoughts later on the episode just to address certain themes as they come. It is a very flawed game. I would be very pressed what audience to recommend it to, because it's sort of paradoxically doesn't really appeal to new players or people who have played Star Fox 64. Kind of does things that would alienate both audiences, but it's still a Nintendo game. I would hesitate to call it a bad game necessarily, but very, very questionable choices. Yeah. I mean, that's what I've heard from others on DK Vine, and I fully intend to actually play it myself, but getting it being released right around the time I was getting married and an unhealthy Skylanders addiction eating up my disposable income. By the way, Skylanders Imaginators is out, and I have not even partaken in it yet. If anybody at home is wondering, I have to hold off for a while. But I have one more Skylanders Supercharger I need to track down. So I feel like that should be my main mission, considering Superchargers is like the game most associated with Donkey Kong. And then maybe I can move on. Since Donkey Kong is playable in the Wii U version of Imaginators, I still have to give it my attention. But I don't have to give it my attention right now. So to be determined on when I will be discussing that here on the show. But regardless, I will buy Star Fox Zero eventually. I'm thinking around the time the NX is released and Wii U games plummet in price.
I very much doubt this is ever going to become the modern equivalent of the Player's Choice million seller, but I'm sure they'll be discounting it.
And granted, Nintendo games take forever to get officially discounted.
Yeah.
But
that's true. But I have a feeling when the NX comes out, Wii U games, they'll have to drop in price, right? Is that the way it works, or do they just stubbornly hold on until they're just out of stores?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how it works. I know, for probably 5 years after it came out, I was still seeing Metroid Other M selling for $49.99 in stores. I think the MSRP doesn't go down, but secondhand sellers bring the price down.
Yeah, it's not worth a full retail purchase at this point in time. But yeah, when we say Star Fox Zero bombed, we're just looking at the rough sales estimates. And granted, yes, sales estimates for games from third-party sources are somewhat unreliable at times, but they're the best info we have. Nintendo will sometimes release sales figures when they have a lot to trumpet, but even then, it's coming. They're spinning it, so it's really hard to get good hard sales data. It's not like the box office when a movie comes out where it's completely transparent. So yes, before you call in or complain to us in the chat, these figures might be off a little bit, but I think they're as good of barometer as we have. And if we're going to use it in comparison to all other games, I think it's still pretty reliable. So there you go. But
some of these, I think, even if you add another zero, it's nothing to be proud of.
Right. So Star Fox Zero has sold roughly, are you ready for this, 350,000 copies worldwide. And it's even smaller when you break it down by region. 160,000 copies in North America, 9,000 in Europe, and 7,000 in Japan. By comparison, Tropical Freeze sold over 1 million copies worldwide, and that was considered underperforming by many in the industry. So if you're going to say Tropical Freeze was a flop, a flopical sneeze, then Star Fox Zero has to be just this catastrophic, not even a belly flop, it's a full-on riding the atomic bomb while waving a cowboy hat plummet. And this is just unheard of numbers for a Nintendo game. I mean, especially a major release. This
or even just in the Star Fox series. I mean, granted, Star Fox historically hasn't. I don't know if I'd say it hasn't been a juggernaut. I mean, Star Fox 64 and Adventures sold really well, and I'm certain some other games in the series that I just don't have hard data in front of me at the moment did as well.
Yeah.
But just, ouch.
Yeah.
I mean, as you said, Nintendo made the centerpiece of their E3 in 2015.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it wasn't the only game for complete immersive experience that Breath of the Wild was this year, but it still was. I mean, they centered their whole E3 presentation around Star Fox Zero, and that when actually being on the show floor, that took up the majority of the space on the show floor was Star Fox Zero, and it's all anecdotal. It doesn't really mean anything, but when you consider what Nintendo was hoping this game would deliver for them, well, ouch, as you said. And yes, the Wii U is an underperforming system near the end of its life. It's unnaturally shortened life, but nonetheless, I mean, there are arguments to be made that were it for another system, it would have done better, and it would have. But
it would have, even if it was marginal. I mean, the Wii U is just a really hard sell at the moment.
Yeah, but when you compare it to other Wii U games, it's still catastrophic. And Star Fox Zero is what most mainstream Star Fox and Nintendo fans said needed to be done to the series in order for it to get back to the heights, the glorious heights of Star Fox 64. I mean,
and considering how much of the Wii U's unique features is integrated into this, it kind of screams a lot like really banking on this, trying to squeeze a last bit of life out of the Wii U, and that's also really, really not good considering these numbers.
No. For years, I've heard, this Star Fox Zero was what the Star Fox series needed. Gameplay that went straight back to Star Fox 64, didn't try to be anything else.
Well, let's be fair. It absolutely did try to be something else, and that, I would argue, is one of the big problems that the series has kind of had for a long time, and I think it's kind of colored people's judgment of it.
I don't know if we'll get into this. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, and we might be coming away with this with different opinions on what would make Star Fox great again, on how we could save the series. But I think that, at least on a surface level, Star Fox Zero was trying to recapture that magic of Star Fox.
Oh, absolutely. On the surface level, I 100% agree with you. That was, the pre-release period when, as we've established already, me and you kind of have very specific ideas of what appeals to us about Star Fox.
Yeah.
And, I know pre-release period, I was kind of side-eyeing it a little bit, like wondering if the continuity shift was a good idea. And I hesitate to call this a reboot or whatever, because Nintendo themselves made it way more nebulous than it needed to be. But just sort of being greeted with this general atmosphere of this is where it needs to go. It's getting back to the tradition. It needs this kind of back to basics thing. Don't concern yourself with it.
Now, you have actually played the game, and I only have very rudimentary knowledge of it. So explain to me how it differs from Star Fox 64 in the worst ways possible.
Well, maybe I should start with what it keeps the same, which is maybe what felt like 75% of the script. Anyway, it brought back a lot of the old voice cast, which I think is one of the huge pluses of the game. I've been wanting some form of consistency in that series for years.
Look, as much as I love the rare voice cast for Star Fox Adventures, and in my head, that's the iconic one, I'm not a fool, and I know that Star Fox 64 is probably the superior voice cast, but in my mind, Andros will always be Scottish, so yeah.
And yeah, there are more machines than just the R-Wing, but it is the primary focus again.
Yeah.
You still go through planets, you still start at Corneria and end at Venom and fight Andros. Spoilers, whatever.
Spoilers.
Yeah, this is spoiling a very, very similar rebooted concept.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to discuss where this game goes off because it's kind of integral to how you play it. And that is the GamePad integration. Mm-hmm. And that's where things sort of fall apart, because there are these moments in the game where you are back in the traditional feeling R-Wing controls, and I still love that style of gameplay, and I will admit I've been kind of hungry for it. Star Fox series has been lighter on that than probably a lot of people would think it needs to be, and those fleeting moments of a return to that are great, and there are a few good new ideas in there. But the GamePad integration, I'll just sort of lay this out for anybody who hasn't picked up the game, best as I can. You still control the R-Wing's navigation and indeed every machine in the game through the television screen, while the gamepad itself sort of functions as a zoomed in target. I believe the game calls it like targeted view or cockpit view or something similar to that. And the idea is that while you perform the bulk of your maneuvering and shooting with just the traditional controls, you're on the gamepad, you do more precise aiming and maneuvering by using the gyroscopic controls that are built into the gamepad. And yeah, if that sounds awkward as hell to you, that is absolutely the right impression to take away from it.
There's no way to turn that off or go into a more traditional control scheme.
Oh, none whatsoever. In fact,
fuck.
Just to and that's something I've had a problem with in Star Fox Command, so it's another example of not really learning anything. Like, to give you an idea, one of the other features that comes as a result of using the gamepad is all in-game comm chatter comes through the gamepad speaker, and you can't even adjust that option. So don't go expecting any significant control refinement.
No, ordinarily, like, I don't mind when a control scheme is tethered to a system, uniquely tethered to a system. I didn't mind the waggle controls so much in Returns, but then playing Returns 3D, I greatly prefer just the traditional control scheme. So it's not a deal breaker for me, but I can see how awkward it can be if it's not refined, and how that can just completely derail your enjoyment, especially when you're so used to the precision gameplay of, say, Star Fox 64. And
it's funny. I think the person who visualized this like best was Katie Tiedrick of the webcomic Awkward Zombie, who read it, please. It's one of the best video game webcomics out there. Sort of compared the gamepad mechanics to looking through a telescope while trying to fly a spaceship.
I can't say I've actually tried that. I mean, I've flown a spaceship. I've never looked through a telescope, though, because I'm not a nerd. I mean, I kind of want to... I want to play it before I really comment on it too much, because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, because it could be that, I pick it up and I just love it. And I'm like, oh, I was a complete hypocrite bashing this. But from what it sounds like and from what you make it out to be, it would probably grow pretty tedious, I would say.
And I've had... it's been received differently by different people. Some people grow to like it. Some people grow to tolerate it. And, I've even, seen people with have vision problems with it because they have to shift their focus between the television and the gamepad so often.
Yeah. Man, this is kind of a off-topic rant, but for all the promise that the gamepad held, it really did not live up to it at all. It just kind of has been more of a burden than anything. Like, I remember, when they first announced the gamepad, I was pretty positive about it. When they showed off the Wii U, I thought, well, this could revolutionize the way, Nintendo makes games, because now you have a complete second screen to interact with.
Yeah,
but
we're definitely getting Pokemon Snap 2 at launch. There is no way they will not do that. Yeah, it's shaped like a camera. It's too obvious.
All it's done is break the games that have used it, which is why I'm so thankful Tropical Freeze just turned it off. Like, I was.
Should I also mention, speaking of breaking, that I think it was my second playthrough through the game, it hard locked my Wii U right at the final boss.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, okay, so maybe the gameplay isn't exactly what Star Fox 64 fans have been clamoring for, but it did reboot back to the classic team, and it completely ignored the continuity of Adventures, Assault, and Command. I mean, it basically was the same.
Well, let's be fair, it ignored the continuity of Star Fox 64 as well.
Right. But I mean, Star Fox 64 pretty much ignored the continuity of Star Fox and SNES, and it just went back to that tradition. And this is what a lot of Star Fox fans just wanted a straight sequel to Star Fox 64 that ignored adventures, and they just took it completely back to the beginning yet again. But more or less, I mean, aesthetics, characters, plot, and at least on the surface, you know, the way the game is actually structured.
The like mission statement of the like aesthetic and story seems to be just Star Fox 64 with a new coat of paint. Right,
and that's the game that a lot of hardcore Nintendo and Star Fox purists, the non-rare fanboys, that's what they wanted. I mean, the Star Fox Zero kind of, at least when they revealed it, kind of ticked every box that people have been bitching about since Star Fox Command came and went. And, completely bombed. I mean...
And I think when people were as open to the reboot as they were, I mean, at least even when I was kind of iffy about it, I saw some positives in it because, or at least, you know, a bright side to it, because reboots do allow you a certain degree of freedom. You can when you do a reboot of a long-running story, you can rewrite that story. You can pull in elements that you didn't introduce until much later and insert them earlier to the benefit of the story. Or you can play around with the story that people already know and, you know, pull the rug out from under them. Or streamline things that kind of don't really work, or expand the role of a character who is really popular. And, yeah, Star Fox Zero kind of does none of that to me.
From what
It just seems like such a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, from what I've seen and heard, it really is just Star Fox 64 with some extra stuff added to it. I mean, as far as the plot goes.
Not even that, like Star Fox 64, but with the script out of order and with other things added to it. And most awkwardly, I think the Star Fox 64 did have a little bit of this, but not to the degree. There is a lot of, because the GamePad is so integral, there's a lot of acknowledgement in-game from the characters in that universe of use the motion controls, use the cockpit view. And I'm just thinking to myself when those moments happen, like part of the appeal of Star Fox 64 was that it, in a way, felt like you were playing this like cheesy big budget American action film. And that just kind of completely takes me out of it every single time.
Well, didn't they do the same thing in Star Fox 64? They actually told you the buttons to press?
I think, but they did it in parentheses, didn't they?
Yeah. It was never voiced. Yeah,
I think they may have had like one line that says press Z or R twice, and that's probably about it.
It was minimal.
But no, this is blatantly, and there's one, like, I hesitate whether or not I should quote unquote spoil it, but
okay, spoilers for Star Fox Zero, people. If you don't want it, go home. Feel free, Cameron.
Yeah.
Spoil the game.
James McCloud's ghost shows up as he does in Star Fox 64's hard ending. He shows up in every ending in this game. And he shows up. It's kind of cool because, I mean, that was one of the really neat moments of pathos in Star Fox 64.
Yeah.
And
Star Fox Adventures when he talks to you from the well.
And I'm like, okay, cool. James McCloud's going to get some new lines. What's he going to get? He's like, and one of the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, I can't remember the exact detail, but it was something like, trust your view from the cockpit screen, Fox. And I'm like, that's, to me, it was like, if you were to re-release, Star Wars A New Hope, and, in the middle of the trench run scene, if Obi-Wan said, Luke, put on your 3D glasses.
Fox, be sure to purchase the official Nintendo Player's Guide by Prima. You'll find all the answers in there. Be sure to get the hardcover collector's edition for only $39.95. Yeah. That's... Star Fox 64 is really good at immersion. Well, all the Star Fox games are really good at immersion, I would argue. And that's pretty unfortunate that it...
Yeah, I would say so. Even the Super Nintendo one is surprisingly immersive for a game that's essentially origami against a static background.
It was pretty impressive origami back in the day, Cameron, and that's something I do want to get into in my grand overarching thesis about why Star Fox has been successful in the past and why it has not been successful for the longest time. So let me get into this a bit. So again, let me reiterate: this episode is not me or even Cameron like trying to get on our soapboxes and saying we told you so. We're not trying to use this as a defense of the Star Fox Adventures game or plot or narrative or the heavy continuity that came after that game. We love that stuff, and we would prefer it stick around. And
we're fans of Star Fox here. We want this series to succeed.
Yeah.
I can laugh off the bits of Star Fox Zero that I don't care for and make jokes about it, but I take no pleasure in the fact that it did not do well.
Yeah, I want, look, as much as I want all that continuity of the quote-unquote Dinosaur Planet trilogy to stick around and be built on, that's not going to be my point this episode. I'm not saying the reason Star Fox Zero wasn't successful was it ditched canon. I don't think it helped it, but I definitely don't think it torpedoed the game either. I think Star Fox Zero pleased no one, but I think besides the point, there's ways to get Star Fox successful again. But before we do that, we do have a call to take that gets into this topic, and I'll cede the floor.
Hi, this is Karakon. So your question is whether or not, anything can save Star Fox, what they can do on the next game or whatever. Honestly, I think Star Fox as a game series is completely fucked. And hear me out, this is not going to be as negative as it's going to sound initially. They've pretty much tried everything, and everything that's happened since Star Fox 64 has been met with mediocre review scores. That doesn't mean the games don't have their fans and they aren't good in some way or charming in another, but no, they tried taking Fox out of a ship, went bad, of course, well, not bad to us, but, it went bad to most people what they preferred. They went back to a multiplayer aspect. Some people liked it, some people didn't. They went back to a normal game with a bunch of story and all that stuff. A bunch of people didn't like it. They tried getting rid of the game for a couple of years and waiting until the next console cycle and trying again with what people liked. Didn't work either. So I just don't think it can be fixed, honestly. And but I don't think it's completely screwed. I think when they launched the most recent game, they did that little cartoon short thing, and I think because Nintendo's been wanting to do that make they've been wanting to do more of the kind of cartoons, things like that. They want to make films. They want to go into things that aren't video games. I think if they continue that trend and start with something like Star Fox, I think that would be the only way to save the franchise. It's not going to come back as a video game for a very long time. All right, thank you. Bye.
Well, thank you for the call, Kara. And it's rare that I've heard Kara so pessimistic towards Nintendo. She's usually admonishing me for being biased against the big N, but yeah. So Kara thinks Star Fox is beyond redemption, minus maybe in another form of media like animated shorts. What do you think, Cameron?
Well, sorry to nitpick. I am going to take issue with the statement that Star Fox Command was a normal game with a bunch of story. It was absolutely not a normal Star Fox game. It was very strategy heavy and completely all range mode. And I think that's really part of the problem with why Star Fox as a franchise can't really seem to gain ground. Because, as you've said, Hyle, pretty much everybody has been expecting from this franchise essentially Star Fox 64 2-ish. Mm-hmm. And every game since has kind of done something to get off that path that's introduced at least one experimental element, often controversial, and there's never really that moment where you go back and try the traditional thing again to see if people still will respond to that, and then analyze what they do and they don't. And mind when I say that, I'm not talking down certain games. Star Fox Adventures is one of my favorites, and I don't think it had any obligation to be a traditional Star Fox game because it wasn't called Star Fox 64 2. It was called Star Fox Adventures. And Assault, I think, was the closest attempt to really get into that spirit of being the sequel to Star Fox 64 that also took inspiration from Adventures. And it arguably kind of flubbed that balance a little bit. But
we'll be getting into Assault in a little bit.
Opinions vary.
Yeah. But Command, I think Command is the awkward game that really didn't do anything right. I think Adventures and Assault both have extremely positive merits. Where Command, there's stuff to like in Command, but it falls far short in its execution, much further short than Adventures and Assault do.
But I guess to kind of get to what Kara was saying, I think we do like Fox. I really hope that Zero's financial failure doesn't usher in some sort of internal death knell for Star Fox where people just resign that it's not going to sell well and they should stop trying. I really hope that they just take this time to reflect, or even see if maybe another studio has some interest and can put together a good proposal for it. But I would be interested in seeing Star Fox in some sort of other media capacity. It's certainly always seemed like the Nintendo franchise best fit for that.
Yeah, and Nintendo's had such great success bringing their properties into other forms of media. Who can forget, the Super Mario Brothers movie or the Donkey Kong Country cartoon?
I wonder if possibly the F-Zero anime, which I haven't watched in its entirety because it is insanely difficult to find. I wonder if maybe that was one of their better adaptations, but because it was F-Zero, it did not do very well. I think last time I had checked, the few DVDs in Japan were in bargain bins. Mm-hmm. And they stopped dubbing it in the US before even a quarter of the episodes were through.
Didn't they release them? Did they release any of the episodes on those Game Boy Advance cartridges? Remember that actually played episodes of cartoons?
I think they did, and every Game Boy Advance video thing, it was just one or two episodes, and then they just halted.
Yeah. I know I brought this up in the conversation in the past, but I was fully prepared for Donkey Kong Country to come out in that format, the cartoon show, and then I would have to reconcile that as those episodes as canon because they're on a Game Boy. I'm happy that didn't happen, but I also kind of regret that it didn't because it would have been a fun challenge as the self prescribed continuity doctor. In
the continuity of the show, would this be Cranky challenging Donkey and Diddy that they can't sing show tunes on a tiny GBA resolution?
Yeah, and they go to the nearby island of Congo Bongo to avoid the shame of their friends and neighbors hearing them. All right, well, let's take another call. Somebody else has something to say on this topic before we really get into what we feel on the matter. So let's hear what they have to say.
Hello, Kongversation. This is IOTC. Since I don't know if you're ever going to play those calls I sent you, and I want to know if I ever became listenable. I guess I'll ask if Nintendo can save the Star Fox series after Star Fox Zero. Well, since Zootopia was a big hit, why not add more furry pandering? Just have Crystal dancing naked to Hips Don't Lie. Okay, bye.
Well, thank you for the call, ILDC. And I'm not really with you 100% on your final thought, but the initial kernel of your call here about Zootopia being a big hit is true, and it shows that the issue isn't with anthropomorphic forest creatures. I think there's always going to be an appetite for stuff like that, even if it's not in the popular imagination at the moment. So long as it's done right, I think people will gravitate towards anything, really.
I mean, SWAT Cats had a fully funded revival recently.
Or has Street Sharks come back yet?
I don't know. You want to get some Kickstarter people together?
No. If I tackle any project, I know Chad and I always have a soft spot for Mummies Alive. That's a shitty. I think it was like an early aughts cartoon, but it like captured the magic of the early 90s or mid 80s to early 90s kind of action figure driven cartoon market. I don't think there was ever a toy line. Maybe there was a Mummies Alive toy line, but it kind of came and went, and it was just this weird blip on the cultural radar pre 9/11. It's like, wait, is stuff like this still a thing? Because this is kind of awesome that if it is. Mummies Alive, check it out. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, Zootopia was a big hit, and I've heard this argument that people don't care about like talking animals anymore, or that it's off-putting because of the furries. You know, internet culture is kind of shunned stuff like this, and Star Fox is you know, just filled with it. And look what Crystal did to the franchise, not to the franchise, but did to brought a certain culture to the franchise that I would argue was already there, and people are just making a bigger deal out of it because it's a lady fox instead of the gay undertones that people celebrated before Crystal.
I am kind of putting a moment of introspection on the fact that like we've heard it come out that the main inspiration for the character designs in Star Fox, or at least one of them, was Thunderbirds, the marionette show.
Yeah.
And somehow, with such a strong like puppet influence, the furry animal influence is what gets the most attention. And it did kind of move away from that aesthetic a lot when Star Fox Adventures came out. I mean, it was still there, and you'll still find it, I think, even in like Star Fox Assault a little bit, just with the character designs.
Yeah. Although, you know, Star Fox Adventures, you can't get too much into, you know, critiquing the design choices made, because again, it didn't start life as a Star Fox game, and it was only the vague similarity between Saber and Fox that spurred Miyamoto on, because
and it's by no means a critique of mine to point out it's a departure. That's one of the things I like about Star Fox Adventures existing, is that it got to be this sort of auteur, albeit, you know, kind of by editorial mandate, this auteur take on Star Fox through the lens of a different art style, a distant time period. Characters got to grow and evolve. You got to see what their voices were like under people at Rare, both on the writing and audio level.
Yeah. And that stuff even worked its way into Smash Brothers. So
Chris Seaver is still credited in the newest Smash Brothers along with Steve Malpass.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, but you know, I know there, especially on the internet, there is this aversion and fear of spurring the furries on, and it's just like, get over it. If you like something, you like something. You don't like. There's always this guilt by association that people have, and I think, yeah, furries are attracted to Zootopia too, but also Zootopia was a major mainstream success and children loved it. And
get the fuck over it.
yeah, exactly. Like what you like. Who cares what people like? I don't. If somebody likes Star Fox, I'm not going to automatically assume it ties into any sexual fetish. I think that's silly and small of people. And you know what? If furries aren't hurting anybody, then so be it. We all have our kinks. So Ray Davies infamously has his kinks. So get over it and embrace what you love and don't worry about what other people think. That's kind of been my rallying cry since coming back to DK Vine, letting my freak flag high, coming out as a fan of all this weirdness. And yeah, like Zootopia shows there is a mainstream appetite for it so long as it's done right. And I think what we need to get into is why Star Fox hasn't been doing it right and why it hasn't been resonating with people for the longest time. One final call to take this episode, and maybe this call will provide some much-needed answers for us about why Star Fox is in the black hole it found itself in.
Not the fun black hole from Star Fox SNES.
Oh, hey, look, it's me, the Mitch. So you guys talk about Star Fox? Well, I need to tell you guys something about Star Fox. Star Fox Zero was one of the worst video game I ever played. It's even worse than Paper Mario Color Splash, which also broke me. These games are awful, and I'll tell you what I think could fix Star Fox. So, this is serious, okay? I hate Star Wars because Disney keeps shoving it to everything and whatever, but what Disney did with Star Wars is a good idea. So, what I think is that they should make a Star Fox The Force Awakens. So, not like that, but that kind of thing. So basically, you should start a new generation of characters. It should be, be Fox's son. I don't know. Fox and Crystal's son, yeah. It'll be like, maybe the only one who's alive still is Pepe and Flippy or something. I don't know. Or maybe Fox, disappeared or something, but you gotta reboot it, like soft reboot, not like fake reboot like Star Fox Zero was, which was the worst game I ever played. Because that game's awful, but it has to be a soft reboot. Have Andrew be the main villain, like they tried to do in Assault, but then he wasn't the real villain. But make him the real villain. Make him, if you want to really bring back the Andros angle, make it Andrew, and he looks even worse than Andros ever did. He's even more mutated and stuff. That would be cool. So Andrew could be our Kylo Ren, which would make Carla happy, right? Because Carla wants to meet Kylo Ren at Disneyland, and I'm like, okay, I'll do that for you next time. But I keep getting to, because I hate Star Wars at Disneyland, because they keep shoving into every single little thing, and Space Mountain is not as good anymore because of it. But anyway, you gotta stop reboot Star Fox, and really, either that, or just get rid of all the characters and just make it a game that's like a shooting thing. Or even better, just make Dinosaur Planet. Just make Dinosaur Planet. Get rid of Star Fox, get rid of all of them, just make Dinosaur Planet. Crystal, just make it like that. Maybe even title it Star Fox something, but it would literally just be Dinosaur Planet for the N64 on NX. Okay? And all of the print advertising would be lying and stuff, but it would just be Dinosaur Planet.
All right, thank you, Mamechi, and thank you for keeping it surprisingly duck-free for once.
I'm disappointed. I was hoping he would have a big speech prepared about his outrage for the reduced role of the duck Saru Marine pilot from Zone S in Star Fox 64 as he reappears in Star Fox Zero.
I'm sure he's kicking himself as he listens to this, knowing that's the direction he should have taken his call. But too late, Mamechi. You already got it in.
You disrespectful little whelp.
I think, I
love you, Match.
Yeah, we love you. Cocky little freak. As much as I get on Star Fox 64 for being the meme factory it became, I do love how immensely quotable it is.
And I know I'm going to and I said I would do this throughout the episode, so why am I apologizing? That was another one of my disappointments with Star Fox Zero, in that of all the dialogue it chose to retread, it didn't really extend that to the boss characters, or for that matter, their voice cast, which was a really odd choice. Like, essentially every boss character has a different voice from what they had in Star Fox 64, despite the fact that they were all reunited or recast for Star Fox 64 3DS.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
It just seemed like when you play the game, you understand, okay, well, they're going to retread this much, but at least if they'll do this, I'll have this later to look forward to, and it kind of yanks that away.
I mean, honestly, looking at it from an outsider's perspective, who, you know, as someone who didn't play the game, what would excite me is if it actually had an entirely new script, even if it wanted to, you know, go back over the same plot as Star Fox 64, you know, come up with new shit. You know, don't just keep riding
exactly. That was, again, one of my biggest frustrations with it. People love Star Fox 64's story because it's so insanely quotable. You don't recapture lightning in a bottle by doing the exact same thing.
It seems desperate. It's like, well, we know people like this, so we got to get it in.
And not even like in the like the winking, knowing nod way that something like The Force Awakens did, to get back to Metch's point.
Yeah. I mean, people, you
just
know,
verbatim.
People, you know, criticize The Force Awakens for being essentially A New Hope yet again, but you know, it does do some clever stuff, some clever subversions of your expectations. And it's not just, you know, there are winking nods to a lot of moments from the original trilogy, but it also doesn't just necessarily do them over again. Or if it does, it you know, can tie in neatly with Lucas's whole poetry, it rhymes, you know, mantra. But yeah. From what I've seen, Star Fox Zero doesn't do that at all. It just goes straight for the cheap seats, and which, granted, that's what Nintendo does nowadays, at least as far as their social media and their Nintendo Directs, and it's like they're the late 40s dad in the sweater vest who's desperate to still seem hip and relevant, and so they just go for the easy jokes. And
I would say if you want to. If you see this as an opportunity to, if Star Fox 64 is a game you love and you want to reintroduce it to somebody who hasn't played the series before, who's in a younger generation, who may not have the patience for a 20-year-old game about, just get them Star Fox 64 3D, or buy Star Fox 64 on the Virtual Console if you live in a region where it's there. Mm-hmm. This really isn't the best way to experience this story.
No, but I mean, the thing is, once you perfect a story, don't do it over again. You know, I railed against reboots many times, and, you know, my fundamental philosophy is, if you perfect a story, or at least you get as close to perfection as you can, don't do that story over again. The only time you really should reboot a story and try again is if it was a really cool concept that failed either in execution or for situations beyond your control. But a good example, I think, would be Battlestar Galactica. You know, that was a cool concept, but it was a cheesy as hell TV show with zero budget. And then it was reimagined as something kind of worthwhile, kind of worthy of the concept itself. And, you know, the original has its fans, sure, but I think that's a good example of a reboot done well, or a good time to do a reboot, where I look at all this stuff that was popular, that was brilliant, that gets reboots, like Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters doesn't need a reboot. If somebody wants to enjoy Ghostbusters, just re-release Ghostbusters.
I was holding off on this because I didn't want to bring Ghostbusters up, but
you're with me, Cameron. It's gonna come up. I'm sorry.
Having seen the reboot, honestly, and I will make no claims as to my thoughts on the quality of the movie, one way or the other. Tough luck. But I saw some of the execution in the Ghostbusters reboot that I really was expecting from Star Fox Zero, which was exploring stuff that that the original movie didn't give time to. Like, I'll use the example of the Ghostbusters reboot compared to the original has a lot more focus on gadgets that the team builds.
Yeah.
And they build more than just the proton pack, and you see sequences of them testing out this equipment, building it at various states as it goes from junk to slightly better junk. And, I mean, final thoughts anyone has on the movie aside, that's an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, I would argue that
given to you.
I would argue that doesn't justify the reboot itself, but you're right. I mean, at least it was trying to do something different. Where from what you've said, it sounds like this is just 75% Star Fox 64's plot reheated.
And I mean, I guess part of that is going to sound hypocritical because part of Star Fox Zero's marketing push was the fact that you have more than one machine in this game.
Yeah, well, you had more than one machine in Star Fox 64. You had the Landmaster and the Blue Marine.
True. I guess you really only have, not counting the machines that transform, one new vehicle, the Gyro Wing, which ends up being rendered completely redundant the second you finish the one level that uses it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and this is what I wanted to get into, Cameron. So, by the way, real quick, Memechi's point about saving Star Fox by doing a soft reboot and moving it a generation into the future, I would love that. I don't think anybody would care, really, though. I don't think that's really what's holding the series back.
I have some hesitation with that, only because I've seen the ending to Star Fox Command that follows that. And, yeah, if you want to talk about character designs...
Look, characters can always be redesigned and still be the same character. I mean, that stuff is fluid. I mean, you're not married to necessarily any
Fair
of
enough,
that.
and I mean, that's essentially Star Wars EU brand of material in that it was one of many possible timelines, and you can override it. But just
my favorite. By the way, spoilers for Star Fox Command. 11-year-old spoilers. I love that one of them, Crystal, goes rogue and goes by the name Cursed. What the fuck kind of writing is that? It's awful.
My favorite part about the writing in that bit is that the reason she does it is because the Lylat system populace completely turns on Crystal despite her saving the universe because they feel she unfairly abandoned Star Fox, but they don't extend that sort of disdain to the people she worked with to save the universe, which was guys who worked for the genocidal maniac of Star Fox 64 and were just at the beginning of the game wanted criminals with giant bounties on their heads.
You see, this is just like the election 2016. There's a higher standard for women.
Maybe Chad's right. Maybe this does take place sometime in the 50s.
Actually, that was my theory.
Oh, it was.
Chad argued that it didn't necessarily have to take place because of faster than light technology and when the Lylat system is actually picking up the, transmissions, it could be taking place concurrently, and then Crystal or Tricky could go back and I don't know what Chad's argument was because he's Mr. Scientist with his books. But no, my theory was it took place shortly after World War II, and they were picked because my whole theory was one because Falco references Einstein in Star Fox 64, which I think they changed that line in Star Fox 64 3D. And then, of course, because Tricky is a young child, and then he's an adult in 1997. So I was just...
Does Falco still say "Geez Louise" in Star Fox 64 3D? Because that's kind of a...
No,
he
says Jesus H fucking Christ. I don't know how that one slipped by the censors, but yeah, really, it's it's like Han Solo saying hell in The Empire Strikes Back. It's one of those things where, wait, there's a hell? What kind of religion has hell in the Star Wars galaxy? You just kind of have to roll with it and be like, okay, sure. But I can't roll with it, so I have to come up with a bullshit explanation. So yeah, my theory is Star Fox takes place sometime in the 50s, or at least Star Fox 64 did. Of course, Star Fox Adventures takes place, 7 years after Star Fox 64, so...
I think it's something like that, because I think like Fox is, I think he's like 26 or 27 in that game, and he was like 19 in the original.
Yeah, well, it explicitly says like 7 years, I think. I have the instruction manual on the shelf behind me. I should just go read it, but that would require me getting up, and I'm mic'd up right now, so I'm not going to do it.
Incidentally, I think I like Star Fox Adventures more with every passing year that I identify with a cranky, bitter guy in his mid-20s who lives with 3 other roommates in his own filth, eating takeout constantly, and bitches about having to work outside.
Star Fox Adventures is actually a great portrayal of mid-20s depression. The mid-20s depressive cycle that has hit every friend I've ever had, and myself, that you don't really dig yourself out of until your late 20s to early 30s. Yeah, that I've never really thought about it like that, but yeah. Yeah, he's just in a fucking rut and he hates his life and he wants nothing to do with anybody, and it's like this complete selfish prick.
And General Pepper keeps forwarding him articles about, why aren't millennials buying spaceships?
Right. So anyway, yeah, my whole argument here is that Star Fox Zero, again, what was just a complete misfire. But really, I mean...
Something you'll often do trying to work with the GamePad.
Yes. But honestly, Star Fox is not the only franchise who's been having this problem. Franchise rot... I call it franchise rot. And it's a big problem at Nintendo. I've complained about this a few times. It seems like as their whole market share has dwindled, Nintendo has decided to just double down or triple down on the only things that make them money. Which, I mean, granted, they're a business and this makes sense. But as of late, really, the only surefire games that have continual releases are Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon. And they kind of have let their other many, many classic series die on the vine, no pun intended. And
well,
granted,
I mean, soon it's going to be pretty accurate if they keep up the current trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, granted, there are releases for other franchises, but those all seem to have in-house support. You know, you've got Kirby, you've got Fire Emblem, you've got Animal Crossing. It seems like
that's why it was so weird when Rare departed and Donkey Kong had nobody at the helm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, when
you
Rare
just
departed,
you had taken it for granted that this studio was just regularly supporting this series just because it was their baby.
Yeah. I mean, that granted, I mean, it didn't take long for Nintendo to assign Donkey Kong to people, and this was when this was still, 2002 was still not that long removed from Donkey Kong Country Mania. I mean, Donkey Kong 64, how many copies did that game move? We critique it here on the Kongversation, and we complain about its quality or its merits, but it was a huge success. So, yeah, just...
I mean, it's not the basis of a lot of Diddy Kong Super Smash Brothers moveset for nothing. People really resonate with that game.
Yeah, well, look at the Lanky Kong memes, my God. And, I mean...
And I like that that's one category where, I mean, DK Fine will kind of roll its eyes at a lot of things the internet latches onto that have to do with our franchise, but I think we all kind of find common ground in the sheer ridiculousness of Lanky.
Yeah, I honestly don't really mind, like the whole like him thing. I've never gotten because I don't travel in those circles, but I'll take 1,000 Lanky Kong memes over one Expand Dong. So, I'm glad one of our characters, our lesser known characters and lesser appreciated characters, is being celebrated to the degree he is.
For more, see my April Fool's joke on the DK Vine Tumblr from about 2 years ago at dkvine.com/Tumblr.
Nice cheap plug there, Cameron. You're learning. You're learning how to be a broadcaster throughout the course of this episode. It makes me proud. It's like when a father watches his toddler ride a bike without training wheels. Toddlers don't actually ride bikes without training wheels. I guess an 8-year-old. Okay, we'll go with 8-year-old. It's a good thing I don't have kids, because I would send my 3-year-old out on a bike without training wheels. Go get him, Junior. And they would die.
Why would you put training wheels on a motorbike, Kyle?
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, there are outliers. Like I mentioned, Kirby, Fire Emblem, Animal Crossing. But those are because the original creators are still at the helm, or there's hardcore fanboys within Nintendo who want to keep those franchises going at all costs, or either that or they're cheap to produce. And
it must be very comforting to be a Kirby fan. It's just a very nice, reliable series that keeps sticking around, and with games of good to great quality.
Yeah, I don't think, I know like a lot of Nintendo loyalists who are fans of many series, or who are like fans of just say Zelda or Mario, look at DK Vine and kind of turn up their nose and be like, what is wrong with those people? But it's because they've never had to suffer the anxiety that comes with being a fan of a franchise that has an uncertain future. And, Donkey Kong, even after 2 brilliant games by Retro Studios, still has an uncertain future. We don't know when or if we're getting our next game. And
it's kind of a shame that Metroid and DK kind of got pitted against each other, when really it should have been a meeting of solidarity.
Exactly. And yeah, Metroid, Donkey Kong, Star Fox, F-Zero, I could keep going through the list. Those are the franchises that kind of just, we don't know when or if they're ever going to get another game again. So it's not just Star Fox that's suffering from this, but Star Fox has had, I think, the most dramatic belly flop with Star Fox Zero. And because we talk about Star Fox sometimes here at DK Vine, this is what I really want to focus on. So this problem is pervasive throughout Nintendo, but we're going to try to zero in on what makes Star Fox salvageable. So if Star Fox Zero, at least from purely aesthetic and surface level gameplay ideas, was the Nintendo nerd's recipe for how to save Star Fox, then where the hell do you go next, Cameron? Do you just make a game that replicates the mechanics of Star Fox 64 without, the added tomfoolery of, system-specific controls? Or, I would argue that's not the direction to go, because I would argue nobody cares. Nobody, like people, the mainstream audience who buys video games, they just don't care about Star Fox. That's my prime argument here. And it might be tough to hear for some people, but I really believe Star Fox doesn't have the cultural resonance that a lot of people think it does.
Yeah, and I'd maybe extend that Star Fox 64 has resonance with people that doesn't seem to extend to the rest of the series. And
I would argue that doesn't mean the characters have resonance. I would argue that particular game resonates with people. It's quotable. People remember playing, and it's a fun game too. Don't get me wrong; it's incredibly enjoyable. It's brilliant. But
yeah, let nobody walk out of this thinking that Star Fox 64 isn't one of our mutually favorite games.
I'm not calling Star Fox 64 a glorified tech demo here. It's polished, okay? But yeah, it never really stayed within the cultural zeitgeist like so many other Nintendo series has, like Zelda has, like even Donkey Kong to a greater extent than Star Fox. People can say, well, nobody really cares about the Donkey Kong Country characters, but I would argue, a lot.
But
more
they care about Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, and I would argue a lot more from that series has kind of stayed within the greater consciousness than Star Fox has. Which, besides the basics, besides the things people like about Star Fox 64, but nobody's going around,
Incidentally, it never occurred to me until you just got into this, but Donkey Kong Country Returns pre-release, one of the things they mentioned was, we know people love the original soundtrack and we're trying to honor that legacy. Mm-hmm. And the final result was we got a soundtrack that was mostly remixes of those songs.
Yeah.
And in light of that, I'm wondering if that was part of the same logic that led to, well, people really love Star Fox 64's script, and getting a script that's so thoroughly recycled word for word from the game.
Yeah, people go on about how Nintendo takes these big chances. I don't think they do anymore. I think they're like the mild-mannered politician who's trying to win over as many voters as possible. They're, maybe they need to be more like Donald Trump and just be batshit insane sometimes, because they really do play it too safe. Since I don't know when did this start, like the late Wii era? When did this really begin? Where Nintendo treads too lightly?
I don't know. I mean, the GameCube era was super experimental for good or for ill.
People complained about that, and now I kind of want to get back to it. It's like Nintendo can't win for lack of trying. They need to find that middle ground. I think Tropical Freeze was a good middle ground. They got David Wise in there to do some remixes, but he had a lot of brilliant new music too.
I mean, yeah, they got David Wise. Let's just leave it at that.
That's the important part, yeah. And, Tropical Freeze did a lot of new stuff with the series, but it also honored, and I would argue it didn't bring enough old stuff back, but it honored the past while moving the series forward. I'll never forget Chad said, after playing Tropical Freeze, this is what a modern Donkey Kong game should be. And he was right. Tropical Freeze, fucking great. It's unfortunate it didn't sell as well as it did, but as I said earlier, it sold a hell of a lot more than Star Fox.
It's a victim of circumstance.
It really, yeah.
It really is it was the right direction to take Donkey Kong Country, and I think it hits a lot of what Star Fox Zero may have been trying to do, which is it appeals to both new and old fans, and granted, they could have pushed it a little bit more with the self-referentialness toward the legacy games.
Yeah.
But what's in there as nods to the old fans is not alienating to the new fans. You're not going to hear a piece of music from a 20-year-old game and suddenly throw your hands up that you don't understand what's going on anymore. It's just an ancillary thing that a lot of people will get a kick out of.
Yeah. Your point is great, though. I'm really thinking about this. Nintendo wanted Retro to get back to the basics of Donkey Kong Country after their experimental era with bongos and whatnot and peg swinging. They wanted to get back to the basics of Donkey Kong, which in this case Donkey Kong Country. So they probably asked themselves. They probably had a big whiteboard. Okay, what are the core essentials that the greater public, remembers and loves about Donkey Kong Country? Donkey and Diddy Kong, the music, riding a rhinoceros, minecarts, bonus stages, and yeah, I mean, Donkey Kong Country Returns was the soft reboot Mamechi was talking about. It was basically it followed the same map as Donkey Kong Country. But it was its own sequel as well. And I think Nintendo did the same thing about Star Fox. But the thing about Star Fox is what the greater public really cherishes about Star Fox 64 is just how quote heavy it is, how insanely quotable the game is. And
yeah,
honestly, I think could that be it as far as the greater cultural penetration of Star Fox? Yeah, it's a great game, yes, and people probably remember having a lot of fun playing it, but all the references to it are do a barrel roll, much to my chagrin, but that's what you see referenced all the fucking time. People aren't going on about, oh my god, it was so much, Zonus was so much fun, or oh, my favorite Slippy Toad moment, bar none, was when he crash landed on the desert planet. They don't talk about
I could go into a big thing about how Star Fox Zero reinterpreted that moment.
Go ahead. I'm all ears, honestly.
Well, I'm going to try to set the scenario because I think there's one level in the game that I think sums up Star Fox Zero for me, everything good and bad. Let me see if I can remember the name, or rather just Google the thing if it won't take too long. But it is a level about midway through the game, like about where Solar would be in the original.
Okay.
And it's a level out in space. It's an all-range mode level, which generally, I'll just say up front, they tend to be my lesser liked levels in Star Fox games, which is part of the reason why Command had so little appeal for me from a gameplay standpoint.
Yeah, although I would say Star Fox Assault, I loved the all-range modes in there.
Well, yeah, and Star Fox Assault there you had the on-foot gameplay as well as, you had on-foot, Landmaster, and R-Wing all on the same level.
It broke it up, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, that wasn't an issue for me. I'll get into what I liked about the level. It was essentially a level where you are, along with the Cornerian fleet, are like in a direct standoff with each other. They've got high-powered laser weapons and such. And the way you solve the problem of they have this ship with a massive laser and shield, and you have to you have to break through their shield in R-Wing mode, transform to the Walker Bird R-Wing halfway through to jump into the ship, infiltrate it, set it to self-destruct, and jump out and fly out. And that was a really cool and really clever sequence, and it made me feel the most like probably any moment in the original Star Fox 64, where it felt like I was playing a moment out of a movie. Mm-hmm. That was your ripped directly from Independence Day assault on the mothership in Katina.
Yeah.
And then, but at the same time, the level also has Bill Gray, and I think is his only appearance in Star Fox Zero. And he shows up for the very first part of the level and then just kind of disappears, just as a kind of lip service. He's just there. Kat Monroe appears from an earlier level, she has one line of dialogue and serves to get shot to introduce Starwolf into the game. And all the while, General Pepper is observing this from a Cornerian flagship. So you might have hit on what my first issue with this is that it seemed fit to cram every single character into this one level. Mm-hmm. And the way that it chose to... This directly leads into a Starwolf fight, much like the one on Fortuna, Ficina, whatever your translation, pick your poison, in Star Fox 64, where you have a time limit in which to beat them before something bad happens. There's no on-screen indication what this time limit is, and if you haven't gotten used to the GamePad controls, which there's no radar, which would help you immensely in a Starwolf fight, because the entire point of a Starwolf fight is being able to see that they're behind you and loop around.
I still can't believe there's no radar.
It's...
What the fuck?
I find it very curious that they decided you were essentially flying a advanced fighter plane that can turn into a transforming chicken robot mecha that can interface with enemy machines, and Slippy couldn't build in a fucking 1940s era radar system.
How is that even playable, though? Radar is essential to those all-range levels.
Well, the idea is that you can press buttons on the gamepad, and that will let you see from distinct angles around you that would otherwise be impossible. And, because that's immersive to playing a flying aircraft.
Oh, what a nightmare.
But anyway, because the controls are such a fucking nightmare, you're going to run out of time. And when you run out of time, the game lets you know you failed by having Wolf announce that this is dragging on too long. And to distract you so he can just make his escape, Wolf's ship hits Peppy's with a laser. And if you've been playing reasonably well at this point, Peppy has full health. It one-shots him in one hit. And Peppy goes careening into Titania.
Oh, okay.
No, says nothing about Peppy's character, no build-up, doesn't gel with the gameplay or what it established at all. Just, it was admirably, like, but pre-release I was excited, they're trying something different with this moment. But the execution just seemed so, here's your damn twist.
Yeah, here's your fucking rescue mission, because Star Fox needs a rescue mission. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that fits Slippy's character in Star Fox 64. I can't say it really fits Peppy. I mean...
Right, he's
Peppy's the old stalwart who doesn't make those mistakes. If Peppy goes down, it's because he went down on purpose, like the end of Star Fox Assault, so...
Exactly, and there's so very few of those little character moments that I really enjoyed from Star Fox 64.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, there might be, but I can't tell because the script is recycled.
All right, anyway, my whole argument, though, is, yeah, we as hardcore nerds might care about this stuff, but the general public, that's not why they're not buying Star Fox games. So I would argue that rebooting the series or bringing it back to the core team. Oh, finally, Peppy's back in the R-Wing, even though he never went away. He was still, in-game dialogue during missions. But whatever. I would argue that stuff doesn't matter to whether a Star Fox game is successful or not. That is hardcore, whiny nerds throwing a shit fit online. Doesn't matter. So let's clear up some other misconceptions here. All right. Like I said, Star Fox won't succeed by becoming more like Star Fox 64. That is my inherent belief. Because Star Fox for the SNES and Star Fox 64 for the Nintendo 64 are beloved classic games. And they're fun to play, but the primary reason they were so successful was because of how revolutionary they were at the time. You look at Star Fox for the Super Nintendo. It had the Super FX chip, which, a year before Donkey Kong Country came out, a year before ACM hit the scene, the Super FX chip was mind-blowing. I remember being utterly captivated the first time I saw a Star Fox commercial, because I was like, is this on a Super Nintendo? And yeah, like you said, it was just like weird origami shapes. But the 3D effect really was unlike anything we had seen up until that point. It looks quaint now, but back in the day, I mean, it really was something to behold.
To say this was that it was the primary selling point of those games is not to diminish the merit of the rest of the title. That is the reason they still have a lasting legacy. I mean, you could make the very same claim about Donkey Kong Country. Yeah,
absolutely not. This is not me making a statement that's akin to, gamers will put up with mediocre gameplay so long as the graphics are good, or whatever the hell the possibly apocryphal, maybe not Miyamoto quote was. I'm not saying that. Star Fox for the Super Nintendo was a legitimately good game, but there's a reason it captured everybody's attention. It's the same reason the original Donkey Kong Country captured everybody's attention. Let's face it. It was the graphics. We had never seen anything like this. This was one of the first games to use polygons. And, I mean, it was on the Super Nintendo in 1993. This is, 3 years out from the Nintendo 64. And when you're a kid, that's even longer, in time. So it was truly ahead of the curve. Star Fox 64 maybe wasn't as revolutionary visually, but I would argue pushed the boundaries in numerous ways. As far as voice acting on a Nintendo console, we never seen anything like it up until this point.
It was, at least for me personally, probably the first console game where I could say to myself, like, and I was a kid at the time, that this is playing a movie.
Yeah, and, voice acting in video games still sucks today. Like, these big budget AAA games, they have laughably bad line readings. Star Fox 64, as cheesy as it can get, I would argue...
And it embraced that cheesiness.
It embraced the cheesiness, and it worked. Like, there's nothing that's really cringeworthy in Star Fox 64. Like, I can play any modern game and be like, oof, when I hear the voice acting. Star Fox 64 nailed it.
And they did something very smart with the voice acting, which, I mean, granted, I probably wouldn't know this in any other game unless I was actively looking for it, but they used the voice acting to guide the player and their actions on screen.
Immersive.
Your other pilots would scream or something when something was behind you or about to come up, so you knew to pay more attention.
Yep. All your cues were provided in the context of the story, which you don't really think about when you're playing it, but you're absolutely right. That was a way to like kind of draw people into the world. And we can't also dismiss the fact that Star Fox 64 was packaged with the Rumble Pack when it came out. Granted, the Rumble Pack was spotty at best, and most of us stopped using it after a time. But you look at PlayStation, the Xbox today. They all have Rumble technology. I mean, that was. I don't know if it was the first to really offer it, but Nintendo was, I think, the first major company to fully embrace it. Or am I wrong in there?
I'm a little fuzzy on that history, especially because I got Star Fox 64 secondhand and it didn't have the pack.
I can't remember when PlayStation released their first Rumble controller. I want to say the PS1 didn't have the function initially installed in their controllers. But yeah, I mean, regardless, whether or not Sony got there first or was getting there first, this was the first Nintendo game that was fully promoted with the Rumble capability, and it's something we don't even think about today. But that was a lesser revolution of Star Fox 64. So these two cutting edge games, cut from the same cloth. They both had the same plot. One was essentially a remake of the other, but two great games, and they both pushed the boundaries. So they were both successful. So here's where things start getting muddied, and we don't really have too much of a control going forward here with the Star Fox series, so we can only use educated guesses. Star Fox Adventures was the third Star Fox game, not counting the LCD watch you could get, I think, by mailing cereal boxes, Fox Tops. I think it was a Kellogg's promotion. You could get the Star Fox watch that was like a little LCD game. Never did it, but I consider that a full Star Fox game. And of course, there was the aborted Star Fox 2 for the Super Nintendo. But Star Fox Adventures, for all intents and purposes, was the third major Star Fox game. And, people look on it as a failure, but let's actually look at the sales.
A million-selling failure.
Nearly 2 million copies worldwide. So it may have not been a huge blockbuster hit the first two Star Fox games were, but it wasn't a failure. That is a complete misnomer. It succeeded, maybe not as much as the other two, but it definitely did good numbers. And it got raked over the coals critically for a few different factors. And we'll never really know if it was because of the gameplay itself, it being a lesser Zelda-type game. But we really can't overlook a simple fact. Anti-Rare sentiment at the dawn of the Rare buyout was pretty high, especially among the Nintendo faithful.
Well, it's funny you say that because when Adventures first came out, I don't remember any of that bad word of mouth right after release. Mm-hmm. I just remember if I heard anything bad about Adventures, it was, well, this isn't like Star Fox 64. But after Rare got bought out, that's at the point I started seeing all these comments along the lines of, well, you played Star Fox Adventures. They should have been sold anyway. Well,
and, the funny thing is Rare was sold before Star Fox Adventures was even released. Like, Star Fox Adventures, I forget the exact timeline. I want to say Rare was sold in September of 2002.
I don't know the exact timeline, but I do know from scribes that the reason the final boss of Adventures is so truncated is because they knew the buyout was looming and had to get the dev team out the door.
Yeah. But, whatever the case may be, there was a lot of... there was backlash towards the game among the Nintendo hardcore faithful. I don't think it really mattered in the mainstream market because people bought the game based on both maybe, the pedigree of Rare, because they still plastered the Rare logo huge on the game case.
And let's be honest, part of it was brand recognition for Star Fox. That was the entire point of refitting Dinosaur Planet in the first place.
Exactly, yeah. So, it wasn't a failure, but critically it did get raked over the coals. One, because the anti-Rare hostility among the people who were kind of peeved, more than kind of peeved, that Microsoft bought them and they wouldn't be making Nintendo games anymore. But, when Star Fox Adventures was announced, when it went from Dinosaur Planet to Star Fox Adventures Dinosaur Planet, people weren't upset then. Like, there wasn't all this backlash about, well, it's not like Star Fox 64, how dare they? I think that attitude didn't spring up until around the buyout, and it didn't really cement until the following years. It kind of was a snowball effect where people just assumed it was common knowledge that, well, Star Fox Adventures isn't any good. It's not a rail shooter. And, I don't know. Star Fox Adventures, say what you will about it, that, should have been Dinosaur Planet, that it's not as good as Zelda. It's still a pretty fun game.
Yeah, I've often heard it, or at least not as often anymore, because it's quick to get raked over, as you've said, but I've often heard people admit who think of Star Fox Adventures as a poor Star Fox game that they think it's a very good game.
Yeah.
And, I would maybe contest that a little bit. I remember back in the day when it came out, I loved Star Fox Adventures first and foremost as a Star Fox fan, because for all that was kind of fish out of water about it, it did try to incorporate all these characters that I loved as best it could, given the constraints it was working under. And as I appreciate now, it was a kind of a neat little character study of the main protagonist.
Yeah, and it was the game that made me appreciate the Star Fox characters. My thesis is that the general public really doesn't care about the Star Fox characters. They care about the game Star Fox 64. Well, that was the case with me. Star Fox Adventures kind of, I know this is weird to say, humanized these anthropomorphic animals for me. Having them kind of down on their luck. 7 years after their moment of glory, they're kind of just slumming it. And
I love the implication that in defeating Andros, they essentially put themselves out of work, because when you single-handedly stop a war, there's not a lot of work for mercenaries who work exclusively on the up and up.
Well, it's how Ghostbusters 2 started out. Say what you will about Ghostbusters 2, but I do love the first half of it where they're down on their luck because they defeated the Sumerian god and essentially wiped out all this rising paranormal activity that was giving them business. And then they put themselves out of business, and then everybody assumed they were frauds, and they got sued by every part of New York City. And it wasn't until a new demigod was rising that they were able to get back to work. But yeah, so I love that, and it made me care about this universe. And it was a much smaller scale game, as far as the glimpse of this Lilat system. And, just seeing like Fox being this bitter curmudgeon. He wasn't the dashing young hotshot pilot of Star Fox 64. He was just bitter and resentful about everything. And to see his kind of exterior being penetrated, not like that, furries, by this young dinosaur, Tricky, and seeing their budding relationship, this kind of big brother, little brother dynamic at play. I love it. I love it. I love Star Fox Adventures. It made me care about Star Fox. That's why I have Star Fox figurines up on my desk right now. I do care about the characters, but it wasn't Star Fox 64. As quotable and fun as that game was, it was Star Fox Adventures that was more of a character study. And, I love it. But besides the point, Star Fox Adventures did a lot of things right. And it sold a lot of copies. Again, maybe not as much as the Star Fox series was accustomed to, but it wasn't a failure. However, I think Nintendo took a lot of the criticism to heart. People were complaining that they wanted R-Wing gameplay. They wanted it like Star Fox 64. So Star Fox Assault by Namco, and it's funny that Namco got all of Rare's hand-me-downs during this time. It was viewed as a course correction. And but it only sold about half of what Star Fox Adventure sold. A little over half. It sold a little over 1 million copies worldwide. Which is, respectable. But again, that's more Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze numbers, which even today on the Wii U is considered underperforming.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised there was that much of a dip.
Well, I think there's a few reasons. Because I remember when Star Fox Assault was announced. And I was dismissive of the game at first. And yeah, I was excited that Crystal was in it and they were following the continuity of Star Fox Adventures. That was all very celebratory at DK Vine, triumphant that, we still get to cover Star Fox, yes. But there was a lot of hostile reaction towards, I think, the visuals.
And being fair, the pre-release screenshots of Star Fox Assault when it was unveiled, which you can still see, I believe, on DK Vine, or you could on one of our old layouts.
If you do enough digging, I'm sure you'll find it.
It did look really, really rough.
And to be fair, the final game, it wasn't bad visually. Actually playing it, I slush funded it a few years back, and I was amazed at how much fun I had with it.
It's a very good-looking game.
Yeah.
Really, the only drawbacks I'd really give it is you don't get as many furry shenanigans. It's really limited to cutscenes. And I'd say maybe Fox and Company move a little bit too fast for their animations to keep up, but it's still a very good-looking game, especially anything set in space.
Yeah, I think it looked uninspired standing up to other games, contemporary games coming out during that generation. Especially coming after Adventures, because say what you will about Adventures, hardcore Star Fox fans, but that game looked gorgeous. That was the high watermark of the GameCube, and I would even argue that the GameCube never reached the heights that Star Fox Adventures did from a graphical perspective. A couple games came close or maybe tied it, but it was a pretty game. And, I think Star Fox Assault also lacked that just general Nintendo polish visually. It had a washed out color palette or something. It wasn't like as crisp as a Star Fox 64 looked. So, it had that going against it. But I think so many people dismissed it because it looked kind of cheap initially, and because it was lacking in those revolutionary features I was talking about. It didn't have that hook that the first Star Fox game had, that Star Fox 64 had. It was just kind of released as, okay, here's another Star Fox game. This is more what you guys want, right? Okay, we're out. Bye.
And I know one of the criticisms of Assault, and honestly it's one I had when it first came out, and have since sort of leveled off and come to appreciate, was it's a return to the R-Wing gameplay, but they, if I'm not mistaken, they still make the R-Wing only levels make up less than half of the game.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And on rails in general is pretty lacking in the game. So, and again, I've expressed my feelings on all range mode, even though Assault is one of the best executions of that mode you could ask for. See, I do kind of see where people may have had a little disdain for that.
I think people were unfairly dismissive of it, though. Here's my thing. Like, Star Fox Assault, like I said, it was lacking revolutionary features, and it looked bad in its initial rollout, but it was a good game. And that's all it was. It was just a very good game. It might even be a great game, but that's all it had going for it. And it kind of didn't really grab people. I think it is brilliant, honestly. Like I think it took what Star Fox 64 started and evolved it the way I would have wanted it evolved from Star Fox 64. Playing Star Fox 64, I was thinking, okay, so what if, I mean, it would be great if you could have on-foot missions. Star Fox Assault took that, but they also knew vehicles are integral to the Star Fox experience. So the on-foot missions all had a vehicle component. So you would have
that's something I really came to appreciate about Assault years and years later, is that you look at it and it did not throw anything away.
No, it built on Star Fox. That's the thing. It didn't rewind the clock, and it took what Adventures gave and said not just continuity, but also, Fox on foot, and said, how can we integrate this in a more traditional Star Fox game? And I mean, I was just amazed how engrossed I was playing it. So much so that, I mean, I 100%ed the game and did it in the most difficult, settings. I got, the platinums or whatever. I was like, or gold or whatever the highest setting was. I fully committed myself to doing everything because it was fun. And it was challenging, but it wasn't the kind of frustrating challenging that even Star Fox 64 could feel like at times, especially in all range mode. But Star Fox Assault, I thought it was just brilliant in the evolution of the original Star Fox gameplay. And it was if Miyamoto had come out with Star Fox 64 2 that did the same things that Assault did, I wonder if it would have been appreciated to a greater degree. We'll never really know because, at the time we were only getting one Star Fox game per generation until Adventures kind of broke the mold by virtue of what it was and what it wasn't. But yeah, Assault was great.
And it had no apologies to make for what it was.
No,
it was called
not.
Star Fox Adventures.
Yeah. So I like Assault, but I look at it and I'm like, why don't more Nintendo fans like it? I don't understand it. It should be everything they want, unless you just want more complete R-Wing on rail missions.
Which, granted, I do.
You do. See, I don't know. I don't know if...
And that was my big problem with the very next game in this series.
All right. Well, I'll get into my concluding thesis versus your concluding thesis here in just a bit. I'll table it. Why don't we talk about Star Fox Command real quick? I don't have as much to say about this, but I think for all the virtues that Adventures and Assault have, and for all the apologies one can make for them, I don't know if you can do that really for Command, except that it followed the continuity. Good for it.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, I hate to be so down on Command, but I think it is the one Star Fox game I have no real desire to replay.
Yeah. I
mean, well, time will tell with Zero if I ever
I've got to slush fund it. That's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 games down the list. So
well, like, I think it'll be okay in the first one because the continuity and story got me through that game. I could not gel with the gameplay at all. I had already said that my biggest criticism of Assault was the lack of on-rails R-Wing missions. Command decided to address that by doing absolutely none whatsoever.
All range.
Entirely all range with a strategy and fog of war mechanic.
So weird. I mean,
which, granted, that was a direction that Star Fox 2 for the Super Nintendo was supposed to go. And honestly, back in the day, I remember reading up on that and thinking, well, honestly, that doesn't sound like it appeals to me.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons the Star Fox series went astray so quickly was it never built on itself. There was always a lack of momentum. So it
was a kid who got a new toy and immediately moved on to the next one.
Yeah.
Rather than playing with them both at the same time.
If Star Fox 64 had been followed up with Star Fox 64 2, then maybe it would have kept that momentum. If Star Fox Adventures had been followed with Star Fox Adventures Walrus World or whatever, had Rare, stayed with Nintendo, then I could see, I mean, remember, still, it sold almost 2 million copies. So I could see that sales momentum continuing into a next game.
And if they were obligated to continue the series, I'm sure it would have aligned more with what people had expected before it came out.
Yeah, I think in the sequel, Rare wouldn't have half-assed. And granted, they had to half-ass this, but they wouldn't have half-assed the R-Wing missions. You would have had... It would have been maybe something closer to Assault, but with more of a focus on just the pure on-foot adventure and collecting gameplay.
Yeah, it's really a symptom of development reality, not apathy.
Yeah. So had they followed up Star Fox Adventures, and they couldn't because, the Microsoft buyout, understood. So Star Fox Assault, again, underperformed, but still had enough success. I mean, it almost had its sales cut in half compared to where Adventures was. But there was a great game there, but it was lacking the revolutionary hook or even, the impressive visuals that Star Fox Adventures had. And I'm not saying Star Fox Adventures did anything revolutionary with the visuals, but it was a goddamn pretty game. And it had an amazing soundtrack with one David Wise. So, it had a lot going for it.
One of the last remaining bits of pain from the buyout is we won't see an HD remake of that game.
Yeah. So, Star Fox Assault came, and by this point, the series has no momentum whatsoever. And then you follow Assault, I feel like Nintendo was constantly trying to course correct. And it was like, okay, well, people hated Assault. Fuck, what do we do? Okay, well, we'll just keep them in the R-Wing this time. Just keep them all in the R-Wing. None of this on-foot bullshit. We got to keep them in the R-Wing. People want R-Wing missions. But they didn't do it. If Star Fox Command was all on rails, I'm curious to see how it would have performed. But by that point, it just kind of pissed the bed. I don't know.
I don't have hard data in front of me, but I think before Zero, it was the lowest selling entry in the series.
Yeah. It kind of came and went, and like I said, the only good thing I can say about it was it followed the continuity. Although it kind of blew it up too, because it provided definitive endings to the Star Fox cast, or maybe non-definitive endings, because there was the choose your own adventure aspect,
and that always made it like that was always the crux of the argument for people who pre the reveal of Star Fox Zero wanted the series to do a full reboot, which was, well, the Star Fox Command broke the continuity. You can't really continue from this. You can't make one of these endings definitive.
It was amazing. As soon as Star Fox Command came out, people were coming out of the woodwork saying, we have to get rid of the continuity at this point. We have to just do a sequel to Star Fox 64. Like, people who didn't like Crystal, and there is a lot of venom directed towards Crystal.
And that's weird, because it feels weird to say this, being somebody who's on DK Vine and has voiced appreciation for this aspect of the series. Continuity is not a big deal in Star Fox. You don't have to reboot it. There is nothing at stake in the story.
No, the only thing that changed over the series was Peppy retired, and he was like just running command back from the Great Fox, but he was still present in all your missions. Crystal was now in the R-Wing, so you actually had female diversity in the cast, and how is that a bad thing, especially in 2016? I'll never know. Like,
it was kind of like I would compare it favorably to comic book continuity. Mm-hmm. You can have Dick Grayson join up as Robin and become Nightwing and split off from Batman to be the Teen Titans, and still have Batman acting like he's 30.
Yeah, absolutely.
Granted, everybody ages in Star Fox, but that's easily fixable too. Just don't specify what year a game takes place.
Well, that's the thing. Like, what difference does it make if Fox is 19 in your head or 45? I mean, he's still going to look the same, let's be honest. So, yeah, I mean, there was like minor aesthetical changes and additions to the cast. And yeah, you had things like General Pepper retires because he was assimilated by an aporoid. Or
I look at the way Command plays that, and I kind of wonder, at some point, were they just going to say he died and just had to backpedal the writing a little bit? Because in the game they treat it as he's confined to his sick bed.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of thinking, is that a sick bed, or is that a euphemism?
No, I mean, where Assault left him, I like that there was consequences to what Pepper went through in Assault. So I'm just gonna have faith that they were just rolling with that. But yeah, and they got a shitty Great Fox. The Great Fox blew up, so they got.
I love that so much.
I know.
They just clearly, in Assault, everything is so shiny and new. They all have individual jumpsuits. They were clearly blowing all of their Dinosaur Planet money, and when they blew up their own spaceship, didn't have enough money to buy something back, so they got like a shitty aircraft carrier.
Right. So, and I mean, you could argue, well, the Great Fox is iconic because you fight on it in Smash Brothers, brah. But that's all just silliness. Just say they got a new Great Fox that looks like the old one. Continuity is malleable. You can get it back to whatever state you want it in.
I mean, at this point, the original Great Fox is like nearly a decade old. They can get it on whatever their equivalent of a used car lot is right now.
Right. It's fine. Yeah, you're right. Continuity is not the issue, but people got hung up on that. And then that became, a decade, that became the rallying cry of a lot of purists that, well, you have to make Star Fox great again by rebooting back to Star Fox 64, or really, like you said, making a sequel to Star Fox 64 is what people meant. But, Peppy's got to be in a Great Fox. You got to get rid of Crystal because she's a terrible character for some reason we're not going to really examine closely. Which I would argue Crystal has some problematic elements, but they were mostly weeded out by the time of Assault. Getting her out of the tribal bikini and into an actual flight suit was a good first step. And I don't know. I mean, people say, well, she takes away from Cat Monroe's place. What?
Cat Monroe had a place?
Yeah, there can't be more than one female character in Star Fox. And what, is Cat Monroe going to join the team? Because you would cry foul about that too. And then I've heard arguments that, well, there's people do a lot of slash fix for Fox and Falco, and a woman ruins the dynamic. Okay. You can still do your gay erotica if you want. Like, who cares? Just
it was a very lonely 7 years.
Exactly. I mean, I think people get hung up on the silliness. It's a good thing that Crystal exists, okay? Not because, I'm sorry that you were shipping Fox and Falco, but, I like that there's a woman in the cast, okay? There can be gay Star Fox characters, even though I don't think Nintendo is ever going to be fully, or that they'll be fully comfortable with that, but probably it's Nintendo, so it'll take 20 to 30 years. But I think these arguments are silly, but this is what we heard. We just have to get it back to Star Fox 64. Well, Star Fox Zero kind of did that. Granted, they botched the gameplay, but they took it back. The only returning characters are from Star Fox 64. And, nobody cared. The market spoke and said, we don't give a damn about any of this. So I would say, yeah, people care about the memes of Star Fox 64, and they remember it as a really fun game. But ultimately, the gameplay is probably secondary when it comes to people buying Star Fox games. I think you need to make a game that's a can't-miss game. And just remaking Star Fox 64, that is not a can't-miss game. And the extreme apathy that people show towards Zero, I think, proves the point. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think I kind of echo that. And as I've been trying to repeatedly revisit with Star Fox 64, part of the appeal was it had this feel of a big budget action movie.
Yeah.
And if you're going to recapture that, treat the new game like that. Give it that sort of push rather than just, again, resting on what Star Fox 64 did. Don't coast on it. Build on it.
I think if anybody takes on Star Fox in the foreseeable future, and I don't see it happening in a foreseeable future, I think it's going to be pretty fallow. I will be shocked, and I will admit to being shocked, and I will admit to being wrong if a Star Fox game comes out for the NX. I hope it will. I'm not trying to like say, I hope Star Fox is dead. Serves them right for ignoring Tricky and Crystal and General Scales and Shabunga, my favorite. But something's got to be done whenever somebody finally gets their hands on Star Fox again. And I think it might be a good long while before Nintendo rolls the dice on it. And I think, one, you need to take more risk with it. It can't... Star Fox Adventures and Assault didn't fail because they took risk.
I would say you need to delineate that risk and put it in the right areas.
Yeah, if anything, they succeeded because you took risk. But Star Fox Adventures kind of had one arm tied behind its back. So any missteps it took can't really be brought into, where Star Fox went wrong, because it really wasn't that game's fault.
And I would say to that, also, I mean, this is my personal feeling. I would do what Star Fox Adventures, Assault, even Command did, build on what you have and everything that you have. Mm-hmm. If you don't like the on-foot gameplay in Star Fox Adventures or the even Assault's interpretation of it, still try on-foot missions, but try a different approach. I mean, not always. I felt like Assault, the way they handled on-foot missions, wasn't the idea in my head of how they would go. And as it would turn out, earlier this year playing Rare Replay, Jet Force Gemini is kind of closer to how I imagined Star Fox on-foot gameplay to go, which is you have a very sort of linear map to progress, sort of essentially in the spirit of the on-rails levels, but you can go backwards and take your time.
Yeah. That's interesting. That'd be good direction. It's hard to see, like, you're absolutely right. You need to build on, let's say, where Assault left off, because Command was kind of a weird aberration. Zero turned back the clock and muddied the clock, and then you couldn't read the clock.
That's Zero built on something that was there before, but it also ripped apart part of the foundation that was there before, so that what you built on top of it could no longer stand. Right.
It essentially went back in time and then had its own mother fall in love with it, and then erased the franchise from existence. How to make Star Fox great again? I think, build on where... You have to come up with something new, first of all, and make it bigger than we've ever seen in Star Fox before. Don't limit the scope. I think, like you said, maybe make it more like Jet Force, but maybe make more of an open world game too. Like, I think the immersion is the key, but it also has to be... I mean, Nintendo's so bad at this as of late. They have successes like Splatoon, obviously, Super Mario Maker, stuff I scoffed at, turned out to be huge successes. So they can obviously stumble into it. But as far as like apps coming up with this new revolutionary concept, like Pokemon Go was pretty big, but Nintendo didn't really have a hand in that, did they? So I think you need to make Star Fox this can't miss property. This I've got to check out this new Star Fox game. Star Fox Zero was never that. It was okay.
And to make it this big kind of thing, you do need that element of risk, because you need something new to show people to get them interested and curious.
Yeah. So I think ultimately what we're trying to say here is, and I would argue our biggest point is, I don't think on-rail R-Wing missions are necessary for Star Fox to be successful. I mean, would it be nice for the hardcore fans? Sure, but And I'm not saying like a completely on-rails Star Fox game wouldn't succeed in under any circumstances, but I'm thinking it would be a tough sell, especially after Star Fox Zero. I think the public would need more. I think you need... Because Star Fox itself is not a brand that's bringing people to the table anymore. You need a reason for people to check out Star Fox. And sure, then the argument could be made, well, couldn't you just come up with a new IP? Why are you dragging Star Fox through this? Well, I think... I'll
give you, and I kind of agree and disagree with your point. I'll give you an example of something I did like in Zero again.
Okay.
Which was an on-rails R-Wing level where abruptly, and just for this level, they do a sort of a massive turbo boost where it's an on-rails R-Wing level, but you're moving at about, say, 3 or 4 times your normal speed, and it completely changes how you control the R-Wing. That's an interesting thing to do with an old concept.
Mm-hmm.
And I really would have liked to see more things of that nature, that it's essentially interjecting a moment of newness into something I was already familiar with. It didn't reinvent the concept of me flying an R-Wing and force me to deal with that for the entirety of the game.
Yeah, but, I get what you're saying, but I think that's just still too small scale. I think, really, what I'm trying to say is Star Fox needs to go big. It needs to be the biggest, most fucking epic game, that's ever been attempted with the Star Fox banner to really get people to pay attention again. And if hardcore purists whine that... it needs to be more like Star Fox 64 because Star Fox 64 was a classic. Do a barrel roll! It doesn't matter because those purists are small in numbers. And like I said, why don't just make a new IP? Why would you saddle Star Fox with, the burden of becoming more epic when it's at its heart, it's always been a small scale rail shooter? Well, I think IP retention is important as well. And I think these characters can be valuable, but they're not going to be valuable if you just churn out shit like Star Fox Zero. So, yeah, let's have this big, sprawling epic that really grabs people's attention. It should be this massive undertaking that's several years in development. That's not just this complete toss-off of a game designed to drum up a few sales for a dying system. It should be a passion project. Somebody should be coming forward with this amazing idea to really bring the Lilat system alive like never before. And granted, I'm not a game designer. I'm just a hack writer. I'm a paid fake actor. I don't know how to do it, but I know what I like. I liked Star Fox Adventures. I like Star Fox Assault. And both games sold over 1 million copies, which is way more than Star Fox Zero could say. So let's build on what came before, but also keep building. Like, push it into new, exciting directions and have a really solid game at its heart. And I think then you would actually make Star Fox great again.
Hyle.
What? Dad, is that you?
You've got to end the episode, Hyle.
Dad, that ruins the episode immersion if you come forward as a ghost and tell me to end the episode.
Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to say I'm very disappointed in you, son. The Kongversation? Fucking really?
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.